Well, hey, Flip It Red California. I'm Ann Elizabeth, and I'm one of the moderators here at Flip It Red, where our goal is to flip as many seats as possible from blue to red in California. Today, we are speaking with June Yang Cutter. June is running for the State Assembly in the 77th District, covering North San Diego. June is running against incumbent Brian Mainshine, of 8 years in Congress. June is an accomplished attorney and a small business owner, dedicating her run to speaking up for the middle class. Mom of 2, June is active in her cause, hashtag Moms for June. Moms for June are done with politics as usual and want an effective, meaningful change in the state of California for their families and future generations. June's first involvement in the community began as the president of the PTA at her local school, which as a parent, I can attest to the high demand of the position. Education is obviously a very important issue to June. Some other hot button topics that June strongly represents are infrastructure, homelessness, low performing schools, and California affordability. So thank you, June, for being here today. Why don't you tell our audience in your own words why you are running?
I never imagined running for an elected office in my adult life, but in January of 2019, mere weeks after he was elected as a Republican, Assemblyman Mainshine switched parties, and it did not sit well with me. And at the time, I was the chairwoman of the PAC for the California Women's Leadership Association. So my initial thought was to find the most viable, electable Republican out there to take him on and take the seat back. But I looked at the bench and it was empty, and I just thought, where are the candidates who can do this? Where are the electable, viable Republicans in San Diego County who could take him out? And I knew that from a demographic perspective, I would be a strong candidate, but I also knew that I had the backbone to stand up for what's right and good. And so I decided to step up to the plate because that bench was empty.
Let's talk middle class, which is truly a dwindling breed. But you are strong in representing the middle class, and you suggest that you will help by keeping money in our pockets. So let's talk about how you plan to do that.
Well, I think that a major problem in California, which has truly the greatest income disparity in America, is the fact that most of our state legislators have never worked a single day in the private sector. They're career politicians who've moved up the ranks, and when they legislate from a place of ideology and not realism. And I think our state would be served much better if we had legislators with real life, real world experience who have signed the front and back of a paycheck, who understand that pro-business and pro-worker are not mutually exclusive concepts, and understand the challenges that everyday hardworking California families go through. And we don't have that right now. So we definitely need to start by flipping seats red. And my race is not just about me and this seat. It's about starting a domino effect that takes back seats throughout the state of California, so we break that supermajority and restore a voice to hardworking middle-class Californians throughout the state. And it's about holding government accountable, making sure that the legislators in Sacramento understand that they're supposed to be good stewards of our money as taxpayers, that it's not monopoly money, that every piece of legislation they pass has a repercussion on the other end of it that affects our livelihoods. So for me, it's about getting up to Sacramento and demanding that there is accountability, demanding that they, talk about what money they're taking from our pockets and how they're spending it, cutting the waste, cutting the spending. Lord knows we pay exorbitant taxes here in California. So it is not a lack of resources, it's a lack of our state legislators and our state government doing the right thing with those resources and using them wisely. And we really need to put their feet to the fire on that one.
On your website, junecutter.com, you mentioned your issues, and I'm just going to read this, something that you said. Free trips to Hawaii, cocktail parties every night, thousands of dollars in what they call chum, but the rest of us would call gifts from special interests, sham legislative days, collect per diem, sexual harassment scandals that seem to be breaking every couple of months, believe it or not, This is what Sacramento politicians consider business as usual. And then June, you say, I cannot believe it. Is it any wonder he works for them, not us? And this is obviously about mishandling of funding, but so much more. And it's something your opponent really seems to enjoy as well. So let's go into this deeper because it's infuriating to me, as it should be, but everyone should hear this.
Right. So I've learned a lot in the last 18 months of running for office. And because I'm not a career politician and I've never worked in politics before, the things that have been revealed to me over the last year and a half are surprising. And the hold that special interests have over our politicians, especially in Sacramento, is you should all be shocked. And the fact that it's about how to keep those special interests appeased, how to stay in those jobs so they can continue receiving those perks and benefits. The fact that they seem to think that it's a job where money just flows freely without really thinking about who it is that's paying their salary and their per diem and all the other benefits that come along with being a government employee. The fact that we as constituents are completely disregarded for the special interests that keep them in power, that should make everyone angry. I'm not angry just as a candidate running against an incumbent who is entrenched in that Sacramento swamp. I'm angry as a taxpayer, as a citizen of the great state of California, as somebody who realizes that my voice is not being heard in Sacramento because my assemblyman has his own personal agenda instead of a desire to represent me and my neighbors and my community. And it runs rampant. There's always good guys, but unfortunately in Sacramento right now, there's a lot more bad guys than good ones.
You talk a lot about infrastructure, but more poignantly about travel on it, our roads and highways. There is a real problem with traffic, and it's due to a lack of maintaining, repair, and expanding them. On your website, you mentioned getting us home faster. This directly has to do with our highways, but really it's about mishandling of funding to be directed at where it should go to handle these problems of our infrastructure. What is your plan?
I think that for many years, decades, we've been told that we need to increase taxes or we need to pay X, Y, and Z extra tax in order for us to fix our roads. And that would be tolerable if that money really went to fixing our roads, but it seems to oftentimes, and more often than not, get diverted into something else. So all of those tax dollars that we said that the government could have to fix our roads aren't going to fix our roads. Here in San Diego County, we have a great example of money that we've set aside to repair roads, to build out better infrastructure, and now it is being spent on transit. So that's not what the taxpayers of San Diego County voted on and agreed to, and only 3% of my district is using transit. So what about the 97% of us in suburban San Diego who need better options for infrastructure to travel upon, to our jobs, to get our kids places? And transit, I think, is a great ideological goal and something that we can work on, but you can't take transit and drop it into San Diego County, countywide, and think it's gonna work. A lot of moms that I've talked to have told me, well, I'll use transit when you provide me with a trunk that I can do my Costco run and I can cart my 4 kids and all of their sports equipment. It just is not realistic. And we as taxpayers have funded a improvement and an expansion in roads and infrastructure that we are not being given what we paid for.
I want to touch the homeless because California leads in homelessness in the US, and there is such a problem here. So what do you think the problem is, and what can we do to change things?
Well, I think that we often hear that the lack of housing is the problem, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that we have to really address the underlying reasons for people's homelessness, and that has a lot to do with mental health and drug addiction. And we aren't trying to solve this problem at the root cause. We're trying to stick a Band-Aid on it by giving somebody temporary shelter, but that doesn't fix the reasons why they will return to homelessness. We also have a problem with Prop 47 and 57 and AB 109, which are prior laws that have come down the pipeline, making it so that we have more people with a criminal history on our streets, violent crimes being recategorized as nonviolent crimes, and early release into the general public. But those things all come together with problems of why people are homeless, stay homeless, how their mental health issues are not being properly addressed, how we don't have mandatory treatment for drug addiction problems. And, you know, there's great holistic ways that a lot of nonprofit private organizations have dealt with homelessness. And I think that the state government needs to use those as an example and follow that path to make sure that once we get somebody off the streets, we can keep them off the streets.
In terms of education, June, I love this one. You were president of the PTA, and I know that when my kids attended public school, the schools were so understaffed. The PTA, which you were president of, and I have to give you huge accolades for doing that, because that is an enormous undertaking that I know parents appreciated you doing so much, that you would serve the school and the parents and the children in that capacity. It's truly reverent of you, but really the Parents Association financially held up the entire school while the walls crumbled and the windows were repaired literally with tape. One teacher for 40 kids, no aides in the classroom to help, no real sports equipment, parent-funded libraries, art only by the parents, science done by the parents, teachers struggling to hold it all together while ants crawled into the walls. I mean, it was almost ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous with limited resources these schools have to work with. While the school down the road had iPads in all the classes and overstocked sports equipment, libraries full, 2 aides with teachers in each class, and the list goes on and on and on. And California's distribution of support to these schools is so incredibly unbalanced and unfair. So what can we do about this?
Well, in our own school district, I've seen the disparities between our school and maybe the school down the road. And really, it is dependent on parent participation, not only as volunteers staffing instead of aides or just financial support. Many of the programs that my children's elementary school has would not happen if the parents were not subsidizing it out of their own pockets after paying all those property taxes and Melrose and all of the additional costs of living in an area with a good elementary school. But that's not enough in California anymore. You could pay all those taxes and you still walk into the school and realize that you need to subsidize those computers and those iPads and those librarians and science teachers and PE teachers and drinking fountains and you name it. Parents have to pay for it out of their own pocket. But the problem, I believe, is that we spend so much on education out of our state budget, but it's still not enough, and it's not going to the right places. I've mentioned waste and I've mentioned accountability, and that cannot be more true than in the area of our K through 12 education system. And there are so many special interests at play which divert money from our kids and their teachers and our classrooms and our schools. The money's not going where you and I all think that it should be going and we feel in our heart of hearts it should be going. That's not where it's going. And that's a real problem. And holding the government accountable and making sure that our education system is actually about California's children and not special interests, that's kind of my driving line in what I want to do with education when I get to Sacramento, because somebody needs to be a voice for families, especially underserved families, families in poorer areas that parents don't have the luxury of volunteering in the classroom. Parents don't have the luxury of taking money from their paychecks and funding the schools. We really need to talk about how, if you think that we need to fix any social or socioeconomic disparities in California, we need to start by talking about money going straight to our classrooms and to our students.
So this next one is huge for me as a parent because And especially I know that parents in public schools really feel this the most, because I truly feel my parental rights being stripped away in California from our freedoms to choose for our own kids. And this is happening in many areas and facets of parenting in California, from school choice to what they learn in school, which is mind-blowing. And in my opinion, of course, to vaccinations. I mean, there are so many areas where our parental rights are being stripped. And so maybe you'd like to touch on some of these issues and let us know how you will give parental rights back to parents.
It's a huge issue for me too as a parent. And I think that being locked down for so many months has all of us thinking about our liberties and our freedoms. But I've been talking about our liberties and our freedoms as parents for the last 18 months. And it's been on my mind from the day I became a parent myself. And, you know, we might not all agree on what is the right or wrong thing to do, but families come in all shapes and sizes, and one size does not fit all, and the government should not dictate the one way that all children should be raised. And that goes with all the subjects that you were talking about. I think we need to talk about school choice. When it comes to curriculum, I think that there needs to be more transparency, and parents need to be given the option when you want your children to learn a certain topic which you might not think aligns with your personal morals or beliefs. And that's okay. You're not saying that it can't be taught in school. You're saying if you're going to teach it, you need to tell me, and I need an option to opt out or not send my kid to school that day. And that is a valid choice that all parents should be given. We're at a point where we know that the supermajority in Sacramento is not going to change that curriculum. And Republican legislators are fighting for the right of parents who want to keep their kids home from school that day because they don't want those subjects to be introduced to their kids. And I think that's a valid parental choice that needs to be protected. And with regards to medical freedoms, I think that there is always a delicate balance. I personally vaccinate my kids. Doesn't mean I'm going to force my next door neighbor to do it, especially if their child has had a severe reaction to receiving vaccinations before. But those are individual liberties and freedoms that used to be balanced with public health and safety. But the choice to go outside of what Sacramento wants you to do gets more and more marginalized every legislative session. And that's what I have a problem with.
Let's talk about Moms for June. I love this. As a mom of four, you really are in touch with the parents. It's really very incredible. So what is hashtag Moms for June?
Moms for June really started because I wasn't a career politician running for office, and my campaign was powered by volunteers who were moms in the district. And regardless of party affiliation, regardless of our politics, we all felt like we wanted to do better for our kids and our future generations here in California. I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a no party preference voter, you can't ignore the fact that California is exorbitantly expensive, and your kids might not be able to go to college or get a job or build a life and have kids here. So we really started focusing on the issues that unite moms, not the politics that divide them, and started gathering moms together to talk about how we're going to make our community better. And we're just moms who are sick of the way California is going, and we want to fix things for our kids. And turns out there's a lot more that we agree on than we disagree on. And it's a powerful movement because I think a lot of moms have kind of just been so busy working their jobs, raising their kids, keeping everything together in their household, but California is making it impossible for them to stay quiet. We've all been woken up. We've all felt the pain, especially during this lockdown period, and moms have had enough, and moms are going to raise their voices, and we are a force to be reckoned with.
Now, I want to kind of turn things over to, it seems to be a very important subject with most of my interviews and candidates in California, which is AB5. And there's another one that we also talk about, which is ACA5. And I would like if you could touch on both of those.
Sure. So AB5 is also kind of known as the gig economy killer, and it has reclassified independent contractors as employees, thereby kind of killing the field of freelance work that's available to Californians. And for me, professionally, I'm an employment law attorney. So as soon as it was introduced by Assemblywoman Gonzalez in 2019, red flags just went up. And I knew that this was going to be bad. And not surprisingly, my opponent towed his new party line and voted for it, effectively taking away the livelihoods of so many of his constituents. And AB5 disproportionately impacts women and disabled adults and the elderly. So basically, all of these groups who were trying so hard to put together gig work to make ends meet, all those moms who were trying to work while their kids were in school on an independent contractor basis in so many fields, whether it is being an interpreter or translator or being a journalist, even being a nurse practitioner, all of their livelihoods are now either decimated or at stake. So I think that it really comes from a place where people do not understand how real life business works, how the relationships between a client and a contractor work, or even just basically how the workforce and businesses must work together. And when you kill businesses, you kill the workforce. When you make it impossible for a business to hire a contractor, you're not hurting the business, you're hurting the contractor who wants to make ends meet. And these are kind of those ideological legislation and the bills that come down that I don't think people who wrote them truly anticipated the havoc they would wreak on everyday hardworking Californians.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or tell our members today?
Sure. I think you briefly mentioned ACA5, which is being dubbed the Affirmative Action Bill. And really, it will be on your November ballot because it passed through the Assembly and the State Senate with 2/3 majority vote. So what it does, it repeals the constitutional language that was placed by Proposition 209, which passed in 1996. Proposition 209 placed language into California's constitution saying that you could not discriminate or give preferential treatment on the basis of ethnicity, national origin, race, or gender. So basically, we eliminated discrimination in the state of California through the passage of Proposition 209. Affirmative action continued to exist on a socioeconomic basis, but not on the basis of race or gender. And it really actually helped a lot of minority communities receive places in UC and Cal State schools. But it's been attacked time and time again by proponents of race and gender-based affirmative action. And the last time they tried to overturn Proposition 209 was in 2014, and it did not succeed. Unfortunately, they got a little bit further here in 2020. The craziest thing to me is that we were in lockdown and the legislature returned to session and said that it would only work on bills which are essential to COVID-19 relief. And the first thing they did was create a 24-hour notice emergency hearing on the passage of ACA5, the Affirmative Action Bill, through one of its committees in the Assembly. To me, that's shocking. It represents an underlying motive or agenda, and this is something that they've been fighting for so long and finally had the perfect storm to pass it through. So basically, when you vote for Proposition 16, as it is now called on the November ballot, you are voting to remove the anti-discrimination language from the California Constitution. The first step in bringing back race and gender-based affirmative action, not only in our public universities and colleges, but in public contracting and public employment. And then the logical step after that would be the implementation of quotas. So you would say, a third must be African American, a third must be Hispanic, a third must be Asian. However they decide that they want to slice the pie, they are now giving themselves carte blanche for slicing that pie any which way they want in the future. And it's wrong. It just seems like a slippery slope into creating a society that I don't want to see what it looks like down the road. And it really is unfortunate because we're saying that we want to solve systemic racism or systemic gender bias through this Proposition 16. But what we're really doing is creating a system where we have more division and more dividing lines and not solving something at the root cause. It's just like homelessness. The Band-Aid at the end doesn't work. We need to talk about fixing our K through 12 education system so that our underserved communities have a better shot at earning a better place in the schools and in jobs and in the workforce through merit, because we gave them the tools to do so. So it's going to be a big fight through November. We'll see how it goes, but I'm definitely speaking out in opposition to Proposition 16.
It really is unbelievable in the political climate that we're in that we could even have a bill like this. It's,
2020, nothing will surprise me.
Absolutely, I agree with that one for sure. Did you want to tell our audience anything else?
Sure. Well, for those of you who haven't really looked into my race or who I am as a candidate, I am a mom of two, like we've mentioned, and my husband is a former naval flight officer. We've lived in San Diego for a little over 10 years because the Navy stationed us down here. We've grown to love San Diego. It's where our kids were born. It's where our family is being raised, and it's where our heart is. I'm born and raised in Southern California. My parents are both immigrants from Korea. That American dream that they built here is rooted deeply in my heart and is a huge chunk of who I am as a person. And I truly believe in the correlation between effort and reward. Equal opportunities don't necessarily mean equal outcomes, but we're the land of equal opportunity, and that's what we need to keep fighting for. I'm a lifelong Republican. I say I've been Republican since I was 4 years old. So it is truly a part of who I am and what I stand for. And I think what really rubbed me the wrong way with our Assemblyman's party switch is I don't understand how the morals and principles and values that you hold deep inside of you can change. You may not agree with everything that everyone in your party is doing at every given time, but the core of who you are cannot change. And leaving your party mere weeks after getting all that time and treasure from your Republican supporters is not okay. So at the end of the day, the choice is me or him. And even if I was running against somebody else, I would hope that it shines through that my heart is in this for the right reason, that I'm fighting for the greater good, and I'm fighting for conservative ideas and beliefs. And those are so deeply rooted inside of me that they drive my fight to fight for what's right. So thank you all for listening and tuning in, and for the opportunity to tell you more about my race. So if you want more information, it's super easy. It's junecutter.com, and everything you need to know is right on there.
Thank you so much, June. And I did not mention that about your opponent, which was pretty paramount because he did run on the Republican ticket.
He's actually been in San Diego politics for over 20 years, a strong figure in the Republican Party. A lot of people don't even realize he switched parties last year, and that's something I would hope that everyone looks into and understands as we progress towards November. But it really does not sit well with a lot of people, myself included, that he could have been Republican for so long, counted on the Republicans in his district to vote for him, to donate to his campaign, to basically get out there and roll up their sleeves and make sure that he got reelected, because he only won by 607 votes. And then mere weeks later, turn it around and say, never mind, I'm switching. And you couldn't help but think that this was pre-planned, that he knew that the tides might be turning in California, that our district was moving from red to purple to potentially blue. And he did it to save his own skin, not to help us in any way.
No, that's unbelievable. Well, thank you, June, for coming today. You have a lot of really incredible issues you're crusading for, and a big theme that I see over and over in your fight, I think is so important. There's education, but also exposing the misappropriation of funding. I think you're so courageous to take on this fight, so thank you. And I see you doing big things. For more information, for June Cutter, please go to June's website at junecutter.com. And June can't do this alone, so please give and give big. Donate online. June, it has been a pleasure. I love that you are a powerful attorney, an involved mom, involved in the community, and that you are very obviously qualified for this position as a California lawmaker who will stand up to the corruption and represent the people. And I truly appreciate you being here today, and I look forward to what you will do in Assembly. Thank you, June Cutter.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope to be celebrating a victory with you in just a few short months.
Great. Thank you.